Here we are again. Happy New Year, everyone. I think this is episode 70 of Retropower Uncut. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to showing you what we achieved this year. A lot of exciting existing projects reaching completion. A lot of progress can be made on some of the ones that are a little further behind, and a couple of new arrivals as well. So it's going to be a good year. First, Utah. James has been working on the boot fit out, if you like, of this. I think the last episode we did, he was just making the fiberglass side panels inside the two sides of the boot. They're finished now, they're ready for upholstery. Those are actually attached by Zeus fasteners, and the thinking there was that the arch spats, which was a lovely seamless link in there to the arch spats, which are probably not fitted for the first time, but I think this is probably the first time I've actually shown them on the car. The rear fixings aren't in at the minute, they're just hanging off the Zeus fasteners at the front. But you do get a bit of an idea of how the car's going to look when it's finished. Now they fit in the door shut area in the original way. So when you open the door, there's two Zeus fasteners that hold them at the front there. So it was a logical decision to hold the panels in the boot with those as well, because then we can use the same tool. And speaking of tools, the bottom part of the boot is the main thing James is working on now, which is actually going to be a hidden compartment under the boot carpet. So there's a little sort of machined handle in the boot floor that flips around. It sits flush, it flips around so you can pull the boot floor up. And then underneath there's a compartment which holds various things, including some tools like the Zeus fastener release tool. We're also going to have the sort of European travel kit, the tyre inflator, so it'll have a little electric tyre inflator and one of those emergency seal and inflate kits. We've got a little first aid kit going in there and bits and bobs like that. There's also going to be a sort of separate compartment under there, just for anything that the owner wants to tuck away. And then once that's down, the boot still has a reasonable amount of storage capacity. So that's what we're working on at the minute. I think Jim's probably going to be almost finished on that soon, to the point where it'll be upholstering it, carpeting it. The main bulkhead panel is going to be in leather. The curved side panels that are made in fiberglass will be trimmed in leather. There'll be a rectangular carpet that's edged all the way around, and then the tray underneath, it just has a basic anthracite van liner type material on it, because that's hidden away, but it still wants to be neatly finished. So that's where we're at on that. Once we're done in there, we're going to carry on finishing the centre console, getting the carpets and seats in, but most of that we know is going to be a fairly straightforward fit together. Oh bloody hell, is that Stu doing a massive angry aggressive soaring session just as we're doing the video. Next up, Mustang. Adam's been working on this. We've been making some inroads into the wiring. The owner actually supplied us on this with just a generic American wiring loom, basically just a fuse box and wires that are labelled along their length, which we've used many years ago on another project. It's not something we tend to use a lot. We tend to make bespoke looms to suit, but he supplied it, and then I thought, we won't use that, we'll just make a loom up. Actually, when I looked at how few electrics there are on the car, I thought we might as well use it, because there's only about 10 things that need fuses. So he's been routing that out, laying that throughout the car. The steering wheel notably is on as well. We were just waiting for the actual column switch part at the top, which eventually arrived. So that's allowed us to get that in, get the steering wheel in. We've made the bracket that holds that up under the dash. We've been just doing the exhaust manifolds. That's another classic aftermarket part. The first set of manifolds or headers that we got for the car weren't completely welded. There was you could literally see daylight when you looked up inside the tube where the two came into one. There was a gap in the middle, and right in a place where we couldn't really successfully finish welding it in a neat way without completely disassembling it. It needed doing properly when the headers were built. So we thought, well, rather than that, we'll get another set. So we got what looked like potentially a slightly better set, polished stainless as well, and the first ones were just mild steel. And no, these don't have holes in, so that's a win, but they do hit the body shell. So we've had to massage them, shall we say, around part of the body shell. which is slightly frustrating when you buy parts that are specifically designed for this application and quite clearly don't fit. So that's where we're at, but yeah, moving through the exhaust system on that. By the time we've done that, and a bit more wiring, we're going to be very close to the point we can start it. So obviously with a big American V8 in the workshop, everybody looks forward to the first fire up. You'll probably recognise that. It's the Redux car, build number 2, which is the first one we were involved with. You may have seen some of the reviews online. There's a great video by Goodwood. If you look on Goodwood's YouTube channel, there's a great Carfection video as well. And to go into a real deep, in-depth look at the car, myself and Simon, who's the man behind Redux, have done a very long video, which we're going to be putting out in the next probably week. The internet's covered in all of the sort of quick and pleasing driving type reviews, but not much of the behind the scenes detail. So we've done the opposite. We've done a really deep dive look into all the detail that went into the build. It's just a chat essentially between myself and Simon with the car in front of us, talking through what was involved. So you'll be able to find out more about that when we release that video. Chevette. So Scott has been working on this mainly, and what has he been up to? So we did the air filter backplate. We've got the air filter on there for the first time. I've been working on installing the bonnet prop. I think we showed previously that George had designed various parts for that. So there's a little machined billet clevis that holds that to the underside of the bonnet. The prop itself is carbon fibre on a little rose joint at the top there, and then it folds up and clips into a little clip at the bottom of the bonnet. And then there's a little receiver which we've sunk into the slam panel, which is a machined anodised sort of ring with a nylon machined insert in it that just sits into nylon, so that the bit that the prop constantly goes into and wears on doesn't have a finish that will wear away. Obviously if we did that in anodised aluminium, after a while the anodising would wear off. So any bit where there's something that touches and moves on it's been done in a material where the surface finish can't wear off. George has just been working on the final revisions to the headlight bezels. We did the sort of basic groundwork for the design of those quite a while ago, but the fit wasn't quite there, and there were a few elements of the design that we thought we could improve on slightly. So we've been reworking those and also shelling a lot of weight out of the design because they're going to be a machined aluminium part. We're trying to shell the whole back out so that it's a fairly thin wall component and doesn't weigh a ridiculous amount. But I think those drawings will be finished today, and we can get those machined, which is the finishing touch really on the front. The centre caps I've just sent away. We had those machined and they were anodised just before Christmas, and I've just sent those away to be laser engraved, along with the little caps that will go over the bits that stand out like a sore thumb in the engine bay, the orange caps in there, and there's one inside as well. So we've got little billet sleeves that have been black anodised that go over those, and then they're going away to being laser engraved with the logo. So that'll have a screen wash logo on it, oil logo, the one inside's got the brake fluid logo. And then the wheel centre caps, I'll tell you what, I won't tell you what the logo is going on those. I'll do a reveal on that when they come back. I fitted the number plate light, insignificant thing, but that's another of the parts that was removed by the owner before the car came here. So I managed to source that from Dave Deakin again, who seems to be the local hoarder of Chevette parts. So he came up trumps on that, and I've just cleaned that up and installed that. Scott's been just working on the brake pedal switch and bracket. So I think before Christmas he made the bracket, which sits next to the pedal arm and holds a little mica switch, which is what switches the brake lights on when you press the pedal. He's just finished installing that and wiring that up today. We also, just before Christmas, did the gear stick shortening. So you'll probably notice previously had a ridiculously long gear stick in it, which is, it's good to have, a decent length gear stick on these, brings it closer to the steering wheel, so it's not as much of a reach when you transition between wheel and gear stick, and obviously gives you more leverage on the sequential box, which needs a fairly good shove to get through the gears, but it was a bit excessively long. So when we got the black knob back for that, because it had the trademark white nylon Quaife gear knob on it, and as with everything else on the car, we wanted it to be black. So Andy, Concept 303, our small part machinist, go-to man, did us a little replica of a Quaife knob but in black Delrin. So we shortened the stick, put that black knob on, and the Alcantara gear gaiter, and that's finished that off nicely. So yeah, we're really into final tweaks on this now. Once we've got those components I've just talked about back, the headlight bezels on, the centre caps on, we're going to be into final spanner check, final alignment and road testing. Something I forgot to mention as well, I picked it up literally on the last day, I think the 23rd, was the carbon panel in the boot. So I think we previously showed the pattern being made for that, which we made in MDF. When we did the metalwork, we left a half-inch deep flanged recess around that enclosure that the fuel tank's in. Then we made a half-inch thick MDF template of that infill panel with the round cutout for where the fuel fill is. And then KS Composites, our go-to carbon fibre guys, have made us up a carbon fibre honeycomb panel, which sits in there. And I specifically wanted it to be, have thickness and be a honeycomb panel, so it's actually got some strength to it, because when you actually lead in there, you're going to put your weight on that. I didn't want it to be just a single skin carbon fibre panel that flaps around and flexes. You want to be able to put your weight on it, so that's why that's there. So yeah, that's about it on that for the moment. We'll have a wander through this way. We've got plenty of merch. Obviously, it absolutely flew out the door in the run up to Christmas. Beanies, mugs, plenty in stock still. And then I think we're going to start doing some different t-shirt designs in the transition through to summer, because no doubt the beanies sales will drop off and the t-shirt sales will increase. So we'll start with Landcruiser. Tom's been continuing the seat base. I think the last time we showed the work on this, he was doing the seat frame fabrication work, and he'd done the side panels for the seat base / fuel tank enclosure. So he's just been continuing with that, basically making the flat panel that sits all the way across the top. In fact, it's in two sections, thinking about it, and a closing panel at the front. So essentially it creates a completely sealed enclosure around the fuel tanks, so that if you drop anything when you're in the car, it can't roll into the fuel tank enclosure. It wants to be reasonably closed off. He's been doing the mounts for the seat sliders. There was actually, everything was mocked up in the car last time I saw it. It's been taken apart, but hopefully we'll have some footage of that where we actually had the seats in there with all the panels loosely in, and that's all looking great. It's all back apart now because he's just back on with the transmission tunnel top, and just doing the mounting for the shifters, which we didn't have the gear shifters we were going to use for the final installation. So we didn't have the final mounts made for those, although we've made the enclosure that they sit within. So that's just off to make the mounts for those, so then we can get them back in, and then we're going to be able to do a complete mock-up of everything. So we'll get the fuel tank enclosures in, the tunnel in, the gear shifters in, steering wheel on, the seats in, on their sliders. And that's all working towards being able to get the owner down here so they can actually have a sit in it, check they're happy with the positions of the controls, check they're happy with the look of everything while we're at this stage and it's not too late to make alterations. So that's Landcruiser, the Jag, Project Churchill. Really exciting one. I think this is going to look be an absolutely stunning car when it's done. Stu's been working on the sill fabrication, which I think is the point he was on in episode 69. He was doing the sill tubes, so we're strengthening up the sills fairly significantly with these. I think they're 4-inch diameter steel tubes running down them. So he's got those in place now. He's fabricated these really nice, neat, intricate sections that come around and tie into the inner sill, tie all the way around the tube and then into the bottom of the B-post. And that really ties the strength into that whole setup. So that's done both sides now, and he's made some of the sections of the actual sill itself. So the upper sections here are in place. The lower section is going to be one of the bits he's on with next. But he's actually been looking at the door latching arrangements. We, as you probably remember, got a X300 Jag XJR as the engine donor for this car, but it looks to be providing quite a few other parts that are handy. So we were looking at the door latch arrangements on it, and they're really quite a compact unit that looks quite easy to retrofit into a basic door design, because it's very much just a rectangular box unit, quite slim, with a central locking actuator on it. and with a view to trying to improve the locking system and the complications we had with getting the central locking to work nicely on Project Utah, we decided we're going to transplant those X300 door latches into our new extended doors on this, and use the X300 door strikers on the pillar as well. So Stu's looking at that at the minute. And then also, further to that, he was looking at the electric window lifter arrangement, and that also looks quite handy to transplant. So at the moment, I think he's just cutting out the section of the door inners from the X300 and looking at the feasibility of transplanting those pressed sections into the inside of our revised doors for this. So they'll actually hold the X300 window lifter motor assembly. So yeah, it's looking very much like we're going to use X300 door latches and window lifters on the doors. And I think I had a quick chat with the owner earlier, and he was in agreement that we should lose the opening quarter lights. So it's looking like we're going to do not only extend the door's obviously going to be back here, but we're also going to lose this division here and have a single piece glass that goes the whole length. We'll have a little infill in the corner here, so we still have a reasonable vertical section of glass on the window there, but then that'll allow us potentially to mount a mirror there, which would be quite a good thing. Yeah, that's where we're at on that, looking at the changes that we're going to make to the doors, which are actually more elaborate than the thing that first meets the eye, which is extending the door, but the other changes are actually probably the more complicated ones. And then we're obviously going to have to make new door frames as well. You can see here it's quite a good indication of the roof drop. We've actually kept it the same height at the front, and then it's just dropped at the rear, but you can see even at this point by the back of the original door, it's already probably 10 mil lower at that point. So yeah, that's where we're at with Churchill. We have a little wander over here. The Morris. The Morris is basically in that point of body prep where it's just putting material on and sanding it off again. So that's exactly what Steve and Gaz are doing at the moment. Lots and lots of going around the car, filler skimming, block sanding, getting all the gaps absolutely perfected. They're almost at the point now where they'll get the full coating of sprayable polyester over the whole car. You get to this point they're at now, and it starts to get, it's extremely close to the shape you want it to be. It starts to get quite difficult to see the wood for the trees because everything is such a patchwork quilt of different colours. And also you have problems where, because the filler sands more quickly than the surrounding metal, the transitions create a little undulation. So pretty much the next step now is going to be get a polyester coat over the whole lot, so we can really review the shape again, without being distracted by the varying colours on there. And then we'll do another block sanding session of that. But it's looking good in terms of all the shapes, the gaps, everything's looking great on it. So that is very exciting to see that coming forward. And then George has been working on some more machine parts for that. So he's been drawing up the interior door handles. He's already done the exterior door handles as a new design part. All of the assembly that holds that, all of the actuation rods that go to the motors and locks for that, that's all done. And then we wanted to tie in that slightly revised version of everything on the inside as well. So although the handle still works in the original rotary fashion and vaguely resembles the original, it's just kind of cleaned up, slightly more angular. It's got a little taper design on it, so it starts off slightly fatter, then slims down. It's just a slightly sharper take, shall we say, on the original. So yeah, that's going to be added to the ever-growing list of parts that are going to need to be machined for that. And on that note, I think that is it for this week. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the next week holds in terms of progress, and we'll catch you again next weekend. See you then.